Please join me in welcoming the 2024 American Association of Neurological Surgeons President, Tony Asher.
That sounds amazing.
Great.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you so very much. Thank you, friends. Good morning. Well, that was a lot to take in. Folks, the greatest gift of my long experience in neurosurgery has been sharing the dreams and enjoying the friendships of the remarkable groups of individuals I've had the privilege to be on this incredible journey with. Russ Lanzer is one of those people. I see many others right in front of me in this audience. None of those achievements Russ just mentioned would have been possible without your wisdom, your counsel, your labors. Thanks for your partnership. Thanks for your patience. Particularly when I pushed us to perhaps explore beyond our conventional limits, perhaps at times even beyond reasonable, socially acceptable limits. And I think that the first 5 rows just said amen in unison. No more projects, Asher. But all kidding aside, fellow travelers, I know you're aware I've challenged us this way because of the sacred vow that we've all taken to serve the best interest of our patients, the sole focus of our shared dedication. My service would have been impossible without the love and support of my family, who I see in the front row, of my siblings, who are a constant source of inspiration and encouragement, of our children, 2 of whom are here with us today, Kyle and Tony. You're miracles, incredible human beings. I'm in awe of your humanity. I'm in awe of your potential to better our world. Now, I am going to have to look over here for a minute. And finally, my wife, Jill, Dr. Jill Asher, whose greatest gift is her selfless support of the dreams, ambitions, and happiness of other people. Jill is a friend, confidant, mentor, sounding board, and rock, not just for me, but so many others. Jill, that's why I love and respect you as much as I do, as everyone does. These souls I just mentioned make everyone they touch better. They matter. Would you join me in acknowledging them and the individuals who are the greatest blessings in your life? Well, moments like this can be a little overwhelming. Mind if I sit? I really hope you were able to see that video at the beginning of this. James Suazo and James Ball, Robert Suazo and James Ball, the gifted artists who've shared their talents with us this meeting. Searching So Long. I love classic Chicago tunes. You guys are getting immersed in them at this meeting. That's one of my favorites. Searching for an answer. Now I know my life has meaning. You know, I've always loved the fact that they don't tell you the question until the very end. Who am I? Who am I? Who are we? What's this all about? This is a true story. That song was our 8th grade graduation anthem. Sister Mary Catherine slapped a vinyl LP down on a Philips portable record player after Mass, and 80 14-year-olds belted that one out in style. Imagine that scene. Now, I'm a pretty forward thinker, but in rare reflective moments like this, I like to recall magical, transformative moments like that. Looking back, it's pretty obvious to me the search for answers to questions like, who am I? Pretty much sums up what my life has been about, maybe many of yours. I was raised in a faith-based community. My faith sustained me in early life and gave me meaning, or so I thought, until one day it didn't. There were just too many obvious inconsistencies, too many unsatisfactorily answered questions about humanity and truth. You know, as a kid in the 70s, I know that's hard for you to imagine that I was a kid in the 70s, but I was. Witnessing endless examples of inhumanity on the news each night, generous questions, those deep questions just seemed to be difficult to come up with. And then I became a scientist, and my science took me pretty far. For a long time, I thought pure reason would be a safe haven until that too failed me. It failed me when I realized I couldn't reason myself to meaning, at least not to convincing answers to the ultimate questions. And look, in no way am I suggesting a scientific mindset lacks value. That would be absurd. But at a certain point, I realized that science alone won't save me. Perhaps more importantly, it probably won't save us. Einstein did say that science is the most precious thing we have. But he also stated the fate of humankind hinges on its moral development. And to that point, it's important that you know that just like reason, my spirituality is essential to me. It's just that I don't view piety and spirituality as the same animal. So, what's a failed theologian and a moderately successful scientist to do? I've never abandoned my search for meaning, but for a period at least, I didn't perceive a lot of progress. But a few years ago, through a fortunate convergence of events, I was transformed. The specific events aren't necessary to describe today, but I will share that I was forced to confront again the question, who am I? By that point in life, I'd be confident who I wasn't. I wasn't the sum total of my thoughts. In fact, a lot of times those thoughts were the problem. I came to recognize that my tendency to analyze, criticize, reduce virtually every element in life has at times actually separated me from whatever that I is. And regrettably, at times from others. Some of you know that. Then one day, with the help of friends who were navigating a similar path, I was struck with the realization there's at least one obvious relief from the question, who am I? I'm human. I was encouraged by those same friends to sense, not reason, what had to be most true about the essence of our humanity. It subsequently came to me that the crux of our existence is that while we are inherently imperfect beings, we're also uniquely capable in all of nature of conscious experience. We're simultaneously flawed, yet have the singular ability in nature to be. And thereafter, in the rare circumstances where I could get out of my thoughts long enough to experience being, I found it tremendously liberating to feel there was no need to explain experience. Its very power derives from the fact it's ineffable, it's irreducible to an equation. That power, when I could feel it, was so great that the relevance of my thoughts, all of physical reality for that matter, seemed dependent on that authentic state of being, not the other way around. I found tremendous peace in that revelation. I knew in that moment my personal quest for meaning had to involve a greater connection to that state of just being. And then I realized how that might be possible. When I was younger, I recited the Apostles' Creed. Those of you from Christian faiths recognize this beginning. I believe in God, the Father, Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I decided I needed a new creed, so I wrote one. Would you like to hear it? Excuse me, but the reciting of a proper creed for the first time in public requires a pulpit. That will do. Don't worry, I've been warned not to fall off this thing. Like, that's going to help. Fellow humans, I believe in a universal, transcendent, benevolent force. I choose to believe in that force despite the fact I have zero objective evidence that it exists. I refuse to name this force, as others have tried to over the ages. The force has revealed itself to humankind since the dawn of consciousness, and all faiths have felt its presence. Yet no person nor faith possesses anything greater than a minor, fragmentary understanding of its true nature, much less a monopoly on the truth of its essence. I believe this benevolent force has a tenuous presence in our humanity. When it does reside in us, it finds entry to our being through a portal which strips away the ego's pretenses and allows us to accept that we're inherently imperfect, weak, prone to misjudgment, unable to ascend to higher planes of meaning through reason alone. Unlike the Force, this portal does have a name. The name is humility. Humility recognizes our true nature and creates space for all of the other virtues. It connects us to each other through shared vulnerability and fosters empathy, compassion, kindness. It allows for experience to complement reason as we try and navigate this strange, glorious, unpredictable life. Humility reveals our true nature, which, while flawed, is endlessly capable of growth and self-improvement. Humility coaxes indifference towards wonder. It opens us to learning, regardless of the source of knowledge, and fuels our never-ending quest of ideals. Humility has been the driving force behind all human advancement. It is our one true superpower. Humility is necessary to experience the full potential of reason, because reason alone can and will lead us astray. This creed, this acknowledgement, is not a resignation, but a liberation. It frees me and us from the tyranny of reason and unrealistic expectations. It opens us up to the broadest range of experiences and emotions of which humans are capable. Amen. Thank you. In retrospect, it now seems natural to me that I'd fall back on humility as a major life force, a pathway to true meaning, because it's a virtue I've always greatly admired in others. Humble heroes have inspired and instructed me from an early age. I've always felt a deep connection with them because their lives have seemed most exemplary, most authentically human. Some of those heroes are in this room. I see them right now. Some of them belong to the ages. In the latter category, my favorite historical humble hero had deep connections to this place. One 164 years ago, almost to the day, Abraham Lincoln was nominated for president 3 miles due north of where we're gathered here today. He lived in the state for 31 years and is buried here. It's easy for me to feel his presence here, now. A lot's been said about his humility, how it played a role in his success and his enduring legacy. Lincoln, for all his gifts, was very human, and he knew that. He was flawed. His remarkable empathy was born of humility, born of his deep knowledge of the human condition and his connection to his own humanity. That was his greatest gift. And as far as I'm concerned, there was no greater example of that gift than what he expressed in his second inaugural address. The backdrop for that address was somber and complex. The American Civil War was coming to a close, but the cost of victory had been staggering. Hundreds of thousands lay dead. Vast treasure wasted. The nation was deeply scarred, physically, psychologically. Despite rain and mud-filled streets in the nation's capital on March 4th, 1865, the crowd gathered to hear Lincoln's speech was immense and composed of people from all walks of life. Many were Union soldiers. I imagine in the crowd one soldier from the 123rd New York Regiment. He would have been a 24-year-old private who'd seen action from Gettysburg through Atlanta and the Carolinas. He was wounded 3 times. He'd enlisted in the Union Army out of a sense of responsibility to support a cause he deemed morally just. He was the same age as I was, 120 years later as a research scholar in the same city. I know this man. He was my great-great-grandfather, Charles Benjamin Bourbeau. I imagine Private Bourbeau arriving in Washington that day carrying a mix of relief at the nearness of the war's end and a desire for some degree of retribution. He was a man of faith and believed in a merciful God, but he'd seen the horrors of war firsthand and almost certainly saw the South's rebellion as unjust. It would have been reasonable for him, natural, to also suspect that Lincoln, who had experienced great personal hardship over the course of that bloody war, would share and affirm their sacrifices, justify their struggles, maybe claim a little tribal righteousness. But if Bourbeau was looking for retribution, he was to be disappointed, because there was no hint of gloating, self-satisfaction, vindication, or triumph in Lincoln's words. What Lincoln did speak of was reflection, forgiveness, healing, the challenges of moral ambiguity. I easily imagine those themes being entirely unexpected for a war-weary veteran. Perhaps most perplexing would have been Lincoln's biblical references suggesting the war was just repayment to both North and South for their shared accountability for the sin of slavery. The speech was remarkably brief given the complexity of the situation, no more than 7 minutes from start to finish, but Lincoln's words moved the crowd with their sheer power, honesty, poignancy, eloquence, and yes, humility. As the president approached what seemed to be his concluding remarks, I imagine the young soldier, now thoroughly confused, conflicted, perhaps starting to reconsider his vengeful attitudes, but still reflecting on his battlefield experiences, still listening intently for words of exclusive resolve he thought would surely come. Just then Lincoln uttered, "With malice towards none, but charity towards all, imagine, as I often have, the president's fist rising as he states, with firmness in the right." And in those words and in that gesture, the young soldier might finally have sensed a degree of validation. Surely we've fought on the right side. Surely we can see the right, claim at least a piece of the moral ground, just a piece. But Lincoln continued, "I now envision his clenched fist unfurling into an open palm, outstretched towards the crowd as he states, as God gives us to see the right." I doubt the crowd was expecting that qualification. So much for human monopoly on the moral high ground. So much for our ability to see clearly. Imagine the hands of the soldier and many others unwittingly, unconsciously mirroring Lincoln's inclusive resolve with their own hands as they started trying to interpret the meaning of this experience. What's going on? I imagine them wondering, what then can we see? I've often asked myself that question. Lately, I've been reflecting on St. Paul's conversion for answers. How the proud and self-righteous Saul of Tarsus was blinded on the road to Damascus. Only as a blind man could his spiritual eyes be opened. Only then did he realize the limits of human vision. Maybe it's not about seeing at all. Maybe all of us humans would be better to wonder less about seeing and more about seeking. I've made some references to both an open palm and a fist, a sign of charity and strength, respectively. But I'm also reminded of other symbolism in these gestures. Robert Browning suggested that our reach should exceed our grasp. At this point in my life, I'm not entirely sure what we're capable of grasping. Maybe just like seeing, there's no grasping at all. Maybe it's just about the constant reach. Humans, by nature, imperfect, cannot, by definition, achieve perfection. But if perfection exists just beyond our grasp, then we have, by definition, unlimited reach. So then, who are we? Who are we? Stephen Hawking's famous answer to that question I love. We're an advanced breed of monkeys on a minor planet of a very average star. But he added that our ability to even contemplate our existence in this vast universe makes us very special. Although our physical being, our minds have limits. Hawking's message of hope was that there is no limit to the human spirit, because inherent in that spirit is the desire to seek ever distant objectives. In that seeking, our potential for experience and to find meaning in life is infinite. I used to go to the Lincoln Memorial quite a bit when I lived in DC. For me, it's a spiritual place. When I enter that place, my attention focuses immediately on the immense seated statue of Lincoln. I always make note of the features mirroring Lincoln's character. First, the hands. The right, open, draped over the chair arm. The left, clenched in a fist over the same. I allow you to interpret the symbolism there. To the left of the chair, carved in granite, is Lincoln's second inaugural address. To the right is his immortal Gettysburg Address. When I think about those two documents and the way Lincoln could describe profound ideas with simplicity, beauty, moral conviction, I recall a quote from one of his contemporaries who, moved by the near biblical weight of Lincoln's rhetoric, stated, "I then thought him one of the greatest men I ever met. He struck me as much as St. Paul would if he were to return to earth." St. Paul, another one of my humble heroes. I mentioned him earlier. While Lincoln in many ways defined what we now see as our fundamental American identity, St. Paul defined a Christian identity. Lincoln fostered a renewed American democracy rooted in liberty and justice. Paul forged a Christian doctrine centered on grace, redemption, and moral integrity. Both taught us that our greatest strength, whether as citizens or as spiritual beings, lies in humility, compassion, and the relentless pursuit of a greater common good. They uniquely combined humility and profound spiritual grounding to articulate some of the most resonant themes in all of human history. Back to the man in the chair. The statue's most profound feature, in my opinion, are Lincoln's eyes, grave, solemn, gazing slightly downward, not focused on anything in particular. I imagine he's contemplating eternity. Then I think about Walt Whitman's poignant observation about Lincoln's eyes, always to me with a deep, latent sadness. And then I go back to Paul, 1 Corinthians, "For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known." Seeing, seeking. Before we leave the memorial and on the subject of seeking and reaching, these days there's a lot of talk about the foundational American ideal, equality. Despite the fact we've fallen far short of realizing that ideal, I find inspiration and hope in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, who gave one of the greatest speeches in American history about his dream of equality on the threshold of this building, and who once described the arc of the moral universe as being long, but bending towards justice. It so bends not of its own, but because people, sometimes at great personal risk, pull it that way. And each time I walk down the steps of the memorial and back into my daily life, I hope, I pray that I have the courage with outstretched hand in my own small, humble way to help bend that arc. My final message is to the young seekers here. Congratulations on choosing an important, noble calling. I can't imagine a more rewarding career nor life, and I make no apologies for loving what I do. None. My only regret is I'm closer to the end of my career than the beginning. I'm absolutely resolute in my belief that the advance of neuroscience promises to be one of the most consequential, transformative events in human life and evolution. You will be in the vanguard of the advance of humanity. Your work in helping preserve and protect what Dr. Roden aptly named the crown jewel in what I'll call the pinnacle of creation is not only important, but sacred. But what you do now and what you will do in your labs and clinics and ORs is frankly not enough. Sorry to tell you that. The challenges of the modern world are too great for you to be on the sidelines of the great societal themes of our day and in the days to come. I urge you, I implore you to view life through a philosopher's lens. Yes, this is a call to arms. Ask yourself this: if we who possess a singular understanding of the human brain and mind are not willing to help address the broadest threats to our existence, totalitarianism, environmental decay, inequality, then who will? To help you sense a greater connection to those challenges, I encourage you to seek connection to your being. Be conscious and intentional in your actions. Live life beyond the superficial. Always allow experience to guide your path as much as reason, and be of humble force. It provides you with the power to affect change and connects each of us to our humanity. Striving to find and enhance that connection is what gives life meaning. Look, I know that embracing humility in what our discipline demands isn't easy. It takes courage, it takes honesty, it takes strength to accept our true emotions, to admit our fears, to acknowledge our knowledge deficits. Imagine that. But that's exactly what's required on a daily basis for us to ethically perform the sacred duties entrusted us by society. Those factors, colleagues, and I cannot state this strongly enough, are actually far more important than the technical and intellectual skills that we so commonly associate with proficiency and excellence in our field. Please remember that. And know that if there's no humility, there's no possibility for change. With no change, there's no progress. With no progress, there's no chance for reconciliation, for redemption, for shared fulfillment. The person who basically defined what it means to be Christian was in his early life a ruthless persecutor of Christians. The person who wrote the Emancipation Proclamation was, earlier in his political career, willing to keep slaves in bondage if it meant preserving the Union. Just as we can never forget, just as we cannot change our past, we also cannot stand still. We can only move forward as best we can. Humility and the generosity of spirit it makes possible allows us to advance in the face of our shared imperfection. Humility is the ever-present bridge between our current situation and our lofty ideals. All of us are human. All of us are capable of kindness and cruelty, generosity, selfishness. Only with humility is there hope. Only with humility can we, limited beings that we are, meaningfully pursue our limitless potential. Searching so long to find an answer. Now I know my life has meaning. So why doesn't Chicago tell us the question until the end? It took me 50 years to figure that one out, because after all, I'm just a brain surgeon. It's because meaning comes from the search. It can't come from the answer, because the questions never go away. Sometimes they just repeat themselves. Who am I? Who am I? Who are we? The questions are never ending. Accepting that basic reality with grace and humility gives us hope. As Lincoln may say at this point, I am loath to close. Let us ever be guided by the better angels of our nature. This dialogue is not over, friends. It's never over. Stay strong. Our mission is clear and true and matters. And to the next generation of leaders, Godspeed. That's all I got. Thank you all.